All right. Well, welcome everyone to the PowerPoint webinar here. My name is Clara Pierskalla. I'm a research program coordinator at the Office of Research and Innovation. I've seen many of you guys. I know many of you guys' names. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking about PowerPoints, how you can enhance your PowerPoints, make them look a lot nicer, even add a little bit of extra pizzazz, as I'd like to say to them. I know I've worked with a lot of you with different design elements and PowerPoint specifically, so we're hoping to do this webinar so that way you guys can learn some of the tips and tricks that I've learned when creating PowerPoint so that you can implement as well. We will have time for questions at the end if there's anything specific you want to discuss, and we'll have I've planned a little bit of time where I can go through any specific things you want to talk about in PowerPoint. If you have any design things that you have questions about, or if anything during the presentation, if you want to know more about how to put it in PowerPoint, we can talk about it. But there are so many features that we have here, so I'm going to be going through stuff a little bit quickly. And I'm hoping to actually make this into a multi-part series if there is interest in it. Because there's just so many features of PowerPoint that you can utilize that I can't cover in a single 1 hour session. But with that being said, let's get started. So our agenda for today, we're going to start going over some common items that I see in people's PowerPoints that really make that difference in making it look professional. So including things such as font choices, and text positions. And I'll also be including a couple tips on using master slides. So in order to make your PowerPoints more consistent across all slides. And then we're going to go over some fun ways of making your PowerPoints, taking them a little bit to the next level, adding some visual enhancements. So I'm going to include a few ways you can add some features to make your slides more engaging for the audience, or even how you can add some different visuals with icons, and even how you can put some animations in your data to make them more engaging and help drive home any points and arguments that you have when it comes to your presentations. We'll also go into adding GIFs to your slides and do a very, very basic introduction to animations and morphing. And I say very basic because when we get there, I'll explain all the stuff that you can do with morphing. And that could probably even be a multi-part series on its own. So, and then last but not least, I'm gonna hopefully have some time at the end to show you some of these features live. So I'll actually go behind the scenes with this specific PowerPoint so you can kind of see how I put them together and how it looks behind the scenes when creating it. And that'll also be some time that I'll open it up to any questions you have, or if you want to talk more about anything we've discussed, or if you have any questions on other PowerPoint features, we can also talk about that as well. I'll also be putting some additional resources at the end of different things that you can utilize in your PowerPoint. Some websites that I like to use, some YouTube playlists as well. And we do also have a very, very brief, I think it's about 3 question survey that I'm asking kind of people to fill out at the end. That way we can kind of gauge if this would be if there would be an interest of doing a multi-part series, or if there's other topics related to PowerPoints or other items that you'd like to see from Ori in terms of webinars. But as always, we'll be sending out this recording to everyone after the end, and I'll send out the slides as well, and everything will be available on the D2L shell. So you don't have to worry about any of that. If you want to go back and look at this video again, you're more than welcome to. So let's get started with consistent design. If there's anything that I want to tell people, if they ask, how do I make my PowerPoints more professional? The first thing I tell them is make sure it looks consistent. Because there have been so many times that I've looked at other people's slides, or I've looked at PowerPoints where there's very much a lot of variation in not only the fonts that are chosen, but the position of where they're located, or different choices in terms of backgrounds or different things like that. And it just makes things look really busy, and it makes things look very inconsistent. So consistency is huge when it comes to making your slides look professional. So talking about specific items that make that design consistent. Font choice. When you're adding items to your PowerPoints, make sure your fonts are consistent across all your slides, as well as using the same font style for all your headers, text body, and limiting the variety of fonts to 2 or 3 types. Now you can have a different font type for your header versus the body. That's completely fine. I do that as well. You can kind of see on mine, I have 2 different types of fonts. But as long as you have the same font for every single title and the same font for all the body. I will note that if you are adding new text boxes in your PowerPoint, if you're adding brand new text boxes, PowerPoint will put the font automatically to the standard font of, I want to say it's Aptos. Microsoft actually recently changed their standard font from Calibri to Aptos. You probably never noticed it. Those are the things I notice in life because it makes me very excited about these changes. But that's just me. But it will automatically use that font, so you have to make sure that you adjust it to whatever font you're utilizing throughout all the PowerPoints. Additionally, if you are copying items from a different body of text onto your PowerPoint, this is also true for Word, it will use the same font that you're copying it from. So you have to make sure that those fonts are the same. I always use pasting as plain text or placing as keep text only. So that way you don't have to worry about the font messing up there. When you're picking fonts to use, make sure they're legible and make sure that they're large enough to read and they're easy to read. You can go a little more fancy for titles since those titles tend to be shorter. But when it comes to those main body things, make sure you're using a very easy font. Adobe Garamond is great, Times New Roman is great, Calibri is great, all those fancy ones. Please don't use Comic Sans. Please don't use Comic Sans unless you're in elementary school or you're making something very funny. It is a great font. Fun fact, Comic Sans is actually great for people who have issues with dyslexia. But other than that, if you're at a university, don't use Comic Sans. When it comes to sizing of the text, do your best to keep the sizing consistent, especially in your titles. I do understand that there's sometimes you're adding a lot of text to a slide, so therefore you have to make the sizing different in order to get it all to fit. But overall, making the text the same size ensures that it's a lot more consistent across your slides. It's okay to have white space. It's actually good to have white space in order to break up text so you don't have a giant wall of text for people. White space is okay. Next, let's talk about the position of the text. So text should be in the same spot on each slide as best as you can. It should be in that same location. So all your titles should be in the same spot. If you have multiple slides that have the same format in terms of having just a wall of text, they should all in general be in the same spot. I have seen many times where people have the headers of their slides and the headers start moving around a little farther down on this slide, a little more to the right, a little more to the left, and it just makes things look a little bit messy. So trying to make sure that they're all in the same spot. Naturally, if you're using the templates in PowerPoint, they put all the headers in the same spot. And I do understand that when you are making a longer header, sometimes you do have to adjust to make sure it fits. That's a point where I say change the size of the font. Don't change the location of the header if you can. I also want to mention the align function in PowerPoint. The align function is great because you can line up your items so that way they are spaced evenly or they're all lined up either in the middle or on one side or the other. My one caution with align is knowing what it is aligning to. So, for example, if you are aligning 3 pictures together and you want to make sure they are all on the very edge of your slide, you need to do them individually. If you click on all 3 photos, and I can show you this as well. If you click on all 3 photos and tell them to align to the right, they will align all to the right, the far rightmost picture, and it will not align to the far right of the screen, if that makes sense. But I'll actually show you quick where you can find that align function because I use it all the time. So for example, on my agenda page, oh, can you see this still? Yes, you can. Perfect. Whoops. So on my agenda page, I have, if I want to make sure these two items are aligned into the middle, all you have to do is go to that shape format at the top. And here is your align function. And there's all these different options how you want it to align. If you want it to align to the center of the screen, you click, I mean, it's already aligned to the center. If I need it aligned to the left, it'll slide it all the way to the left. Align to the right, all the way to the right. Now, keep in mind, for example, if I want these two to be aligned together all the way to the left side, if I have both of them selected and I hit align to the left, if you can see, it aligns them to the left to each other, but not to the screen itself. So that is one thing to keep in mind when you do use that align function, is to make sure, as you see, they're aligned in the middle, but they're not aligned in the middle of the screen. So keep that in mind when using that align function. All right, let me pull this down. All right, last, master slides. So master slides is actually a really great tool that you can use to make sure all your slides are consistent across backgrounds, across positions, across fonts. It is actually it creates a template for your PowerPoint that you can use as a base. I will note that anything you put on the slide master will be on every single slide, and you cannot directly edit out of the slide master. So for example, if you put a background in there, or if you put a logo, they will be on every single slide. It is basically your general template for your PowerPoint. You can also set specific fonts as the default, or you can set specific sizes of your fonts as default. I will note that the School of Health Sciences does have a slide template or a master slides that you can use. If you want to know where that is, let me know. I don't have the link for it right now, but we do have a master slide template. USD also has a master slide template that you can use when it comes to your presentations. Master slides is something that I would love to do a future webinar on, because there's a lot of things that you can do with it, but there's a little bit too much to go into detail right now. But in order to see where master slides is, you just go to that view function at the top, and then under master views is slide master. You click here, and this is your master template for your slides. So you can see I made the slide template master to have the same color background, just to make it easier when creating this presentation. And you can see all the different types of formats that you can edit on there. So that's a basic. Then you close master view and you get back to your own PowerPoint. All right. Next, let's talk about visual enhancements, how to make your information more engaging for the audience and how to make things a little bit more fun. I'm always a big fan of using different design elements to help the audience follow your presentation, whether it be using progress bars, animations, visual representations. Starting with progress bars. I am a huge, huge, huge fan of progress bars. Not only does it help see the audience how far you are in the presentation, it also gives them an idea of how long your presentation is going to be. It can be very simple. You can make it very complex. If you actually see at the bottom where these yellow bars are, that's my progress bar for this presentation. Oh, thank you, Nathaniel, for putting the template in there. He put the School of Health Sciences template in the chat. So if you want access to that, it is right there. But for progress, I have these yellow squares representing our progress on our presentation based on our different categories. So you can see we're going through 5 different topics, and we're on topic number 2 right now. You can even do something even as simple as adding numbers to your slides. Now, I know slide numbers is a very common feature in PowerPoint, and while slide numbers are great, it's better to have how many total slides are in your presentation. So instead of just having slide 2, having slide 2 out of 20. Because that way I know that there's 20 slides. I know to expect we're about halfway through the presentation if we're on slide 10. If all I see is slide 2, I don't know if we're going to be 2 of 5. I don't know if we're going to be 2 of 50. So it can help keep the audience going in knowing where you are at in the presentation and how much you have left. So a couple little examples, you can even do a progress bar like using a, I'm pointing over here because it's on this screen for me, but you can even use a sort of a loading bar sort of system where as you go through the presentation, it goes through. But I always personally like just using the squares because that way you can see exactly how many topics we have. Another thing you can also do is animating your data. I'm hoping your confidence in PowerPoint goes up as we go through this presentation. But animating your data is really great, not only in terms of having visual appeal, it can also help drive home any results that you want to show. There's a lot of different things you can do when it comes to doing your animating your data. And Carrie, we can talk about adding a progress bar. That's actually something you have to do manually. Well, I can go through that at the end, how I do my progress bar. So good question of how to add a progress bar. We'll discuss that at the very end. So in terms of adding animations to your charts, you can actually just do that in the animation function. And there'll be some options of animating it by series, by category, changing the speed of your animations. And we can talk about that a little bit more at the very end, but it's a great feature to use for your data. You can even have things show up at specific points. So that way you can, if you're talking about different categories of enrollment at different universities, and you can actually have each university pop up as you're discussing them. So it's a great way of adding a little bit more, not only pizzazz to your data, but also to help drive home any results you want to know. Finally, visual representation. I'm always saying if you can visualize it, add some visuals because words can get a lot after a while, but if you can add pictures to things, it makes it a lot easier to understand your information. So for example, I actually changed last slide to show add some pictures or some icons in there to actually add a little bit more visual representation to the slide. It helps organize your thoughts and ideas, and it also just helps add that visual aid so people can remember it in the future. What my biggest recommendation is using the icons that are provided in PowerPoint itself. They have so many icons there that you can utilize. And I can actually show you where that's at really quick here. So if you go to insert at the top, boop, 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 boop. And then there'll be right next to your shapes, there'll be an icon button. So if you click on that, it'll actually pull up the list of icons. And when I tell you there's a lot of icons, there are a lot of icons. And they've added a lot more since I've started utilizing PowerPoint. So if you wanted something of like presentation, of icon that shows presentations, it'll show you all the different types of presentation related icons that you can utilize. And you can change the color of the icons, you can change the size of them as well. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to those icons that you can use. So these three icons are ones that I just got directly off of PowerPoint that you can use. Now, if you're looking through the icons and don't see anything that quite fits what you're looking for, feel free to, oopsies, go forward, please. Don't be afraid to go to Google. Google's a great place that you can find icons if you haven't found exactly what you're looking for. You can even find animated icons. And I always say, don't be afraid of picking icons that have transparent or non-transparent backgrounds because there is a function of creating them transparent in PowerPoint itself. So these are all three icons I found on Google. I usually use search terms such as icon. So if I say running icon, then you'll usually get a lot of different options. If you do find a picture that you really like, but it doesn't have a transparent background, I always click by accident, such as this one here with the little painting. It's very easy to make things non-transparent transparent. All you have to do is you click on that icon, you go to picture format at the top, and you're not going to transparency, but you're going to color option. So if you click on the color option, at the very bottom, you have a set transparent color. Now, if you click on that, and then you have a little paintbrush show up, it'll have you select which color you want to be transparent. So if I click the white here, it'll automatically make it. It is now a transparent picture. You can see it's completely transparent now. And so I can kind of use it as more of an icon, which is really nice. My one warning when it comes to transparency or making things transparent, it doesn't always work when you have more complicated pictures. That's why I always recommend using the word icon when searching for things through Google, because if you get those icons that have more simple lines, they're a lot easier to become transparent than, say, a hand-drawn picture or something like that. So they're a lot easier to make transparent if need be. All right, let's talk about animations and let's talk about transitions. GIFs specifically are great to help give some movement to your slides. You can see in the previous one, I actually had a GIF on there of the guy running, just to make things a little more interesting. I always say, though, when it comes to using GIFs, use them sparingly and use them wisely. Don't add 5 different GIFs onto your slide, because that's just going to make things really busy really fast. And it might just pull away from the audience, and it might just make them more distracted than it's worth. When looking for GIFs, you can always try to look for something that kind of goes with your color scheme, so it almost looks like it goes with the slides. And I always use search terms such as GIF or icon when including them into my PowerPoints. It's really easy to add a GIF to your PowerPoint. You add it the exact same way as you add a photo. You can just copy and paste it directly in, and it'll just go in just like a photo. But GIFs can be great for emphasizing your different points, or even just making drawing attention to specific things in your slides. And in general, it can just add a little bit of movement, which is always really nice too. Finally, morphing. So morphing is actually a relatively new feature in PowerPoint that they've implemented. And it's basically, the best way of describing it is it's a type of transition. So transitioning from one slide to the next, it is one of the options you can use for that transition, where it'll actually use the items from the previous slide and the next slide and try to put them together or move them so that way they actually go in line with each other. And I'll explain that a little bit more. I know it's a really confusing definition of it, but I'll show you how it kind of works, and you can get a better idea of what morphing is. But I will say, while morphing is great as an option for your animations, as it's a lot more intuitive, there is a lot of trial and error with it. So if you try using morphing on your slides and it's not working out, don't panic. It does take some trial and error in order to get it to work. And sometimes it likes to be finicky in terms of what it likes to take and morph things into new items. But I could easily do multiple webinars on morphing alone. So the best way for me to show what morphing is through this slide, for example. So we had this slide where we went from this one of the GIF of the little beaker, and then we had the brain come up as an option. If we actually look to see what that slide looks like, if we look at this current slide with the GIF on here, you can see in the little bottom corner a little tiny brain that's hiding there, not on screen at all. So what this morph transition did is it saw that this picture of the brain was down here and saw that it was up here and said, okay, the brain is at the bottom and now it's up here. How can I move it or morph it that way it goes into that spot? And that's how it figured out for that transition, going from, you kind of see, from there, and now it comes up into there. So that's a very basic introduction of what morphing is. I love morphing because you can actually use it in many different ways. You can use it to help show different areas of the brain, or I actually just did a couple examples of different ways you can use morphing. So in this one, I had the brain moving around into the different lobes. So you can say, oh, there's the frontal lobe, there's the parietal lobe. Here are the things that they do. You can also use it in differentiating your categories. So another example I did, how does preventative medicine affect someone throughout the lifespan? Some simple question that I bet many of you guys would probably go through. And then I just did all the different categories there at the top. And then I had them start going. And so we start talking about infancy and talking about some things there. Then you can even have it go up into the next one. Now it's going to childhood. And it's just that way of tracking where you're at in the presentation and using, all I had to do is going from one slide to the next, that morph knows exactly what needs to go where, and it'll take them and move them around for you. So you don't even have to use the animation option and physically move them at all. It intuitively knows which one to use, which is great. All right, so those are all the basic things I have in terms of our presentation. Now I can pull back here. I'm going to pull back here and we can look through my actual slide presentation so I can kind of show as an example of how I put this together. And I will go through how I do these little transition, what are these progress bars? I will go through that as well during the presentation. So starting at the beginning, welcome, here's my introduction slide. We have all the items there. And as an example of how I use the morphing, if we remember, we went from there to here, and you can see all these PowerPoint icons or logos are all in the outside. Well, if we go to transitions at the top, this is where your morph option is right up here. And if I hit the preview button, it'll show you exactly what it did to go from this first slide to the second. So if I hit preview, you can see it pulls all those PowerPoint items away and moves them back over here. And so that's how I do my transitions from one to the other. So there's a lot of behind the scenes when it comes to using morphing, but I find it a lot easier than using the animation at the top because all I have to do is move them and then it knows where to put them. Rather than having to add an animation, make sure it goes into the right spot or tell it exactly where it needs to go. It's a lot more user-friendly in that way. And as for the little progress bars you see at the bottom here, you can actually see there's the start of my progress bars in our agenda. So you can't see them at the beginning, but as soon as we go up to that first slide, or our starting first slide, transitions, you can actually see them pop up right there at the beginning. And this is a very simple way of using my progress bar. So I just create rectangles based on how many slides I have. And then as we go in through the next one, you can see this slide has the first one up and this one has the second one up. So it actually will just move that one down and this one right up. So that's all I do for those progress bars as an example for that. For this additional progress bar that I had here, where I used the second example, this is simply 2 rectangles, as you can see. And then if you go on to the next slide, this is just another rectangle. So I just took these 2 rectangles and made this rectangle longer. So then when you go to that morphing, it just made it longer. That's all that is for that progress bar there. So, and then as for your charts in terms of your data, this is one where you cannot use morphing, unfortunately. But this one that you use an animation bar, and you can actually see in the effect options, I have this selected. And if you go into the effects options, you can see it actually changes the picture here to some charts. So that's why you know it's actually a chart related one. So you can actually have them change by series, by category, or have it all come up as one object. And if we actually pull up the animation page for this is where it shows each category coming up as it goes through. So if I hit play here, it pulls up the chart and then it goes one after the other for each of those categories. So that's how I did that one there. let's see. I'm trying to look at the behind the scenes items that I did that would be interesting. We went through this one where we talked about adding that or removing that transparent item. Oh, here's another one here. So you can see here I have two slides. They look pretty much the same except for that GIF is there. And that's because whoopsies. You can see originally I had this bar popping up. Well, the bar is right down here, waiting to go pop up for the next slide. And then you can actually see down here, there's that old GIF that actually got pulled down when that brain came in. So, otherwise, is there any other questions that people have about PowerPoint specifically, or anything that you'd like to see more about, or anything like that?
Clara, are there guidelines on what is too much movement in a slide that's distracting to an audience?
Um, as far as I know, no, there's no specific guidelines on what is too much and what is not enough. There is a little bit of intuition when it comes to it. I would always say don't, if you're going to be adding movement to a slide, don't add more than one or two separate items when it comes to movement. If you can focus on only one item of movement in a slide, that's usually the best method, because usually you only want the audience's focus to be on one item at a time. So, and that varies when it comes to movement. So for example, at this beginning here, we had all of these items being pulled back. However, first of all, they're all the same item and it's just a background image. It's nothing that they need to focus so much on. And because they're being pulled back and disappearing completely, they weren't maintaining on the screen. When it comes to things like GIFs, I would say only add one, maybe two if they kind of go together, just so it doesn't get too busy too quickly. Now, if the item is very small or if there's not a lot of color to it, you could probably get away with adding two. Unfortunately, there's no specific guidelines, but I would personally say stick to one piece of movement per slide, at the most.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other specific questions on things?
Clara, approximately, how long did it take you to create this presentation?
Well, okay.
And I'm sure experience. I mean, it takes a while to learn.
Yes. And I will say, after I learned that we had about 20 to 30 people that were planning on attending this, I spent a lot more time on this than expected because I wanted to make sure it was good and fun. Now, this specific presentation, I mean, this took multiple hours for me to put together. And just in terms of, since I put a lot of different moving things, because I wanted to show a lot of different visual examples, adding all that movement in can take some time in terms of trial and error. But if you want to, once you start getting better at things start coming quicker and design starts coming quicker. So if you're doing a simple adding one item of movement in, that could take a minute, maybe two. This presentation is probably a very bad example of how long things will take because, yeah, this one took me many hours to do, but that's because I was adding a lot of design features in here. The great thing about when it comes to a lot of this stuff is you can easily copy items from one slide to the next. So for example, these progress bars, you can easily copy them and paste them right onto the next slide and they'll put them in there right at the exact spot they need to be. So that's another great resource is utilizing your copy and paste when you can. So for these slides, I would design it and make sure everything looked like how I wanted to, and then you just copy and paste that slide multiple times over. So utilize your copy and paste. It really makes things go quicker. Did that answer your question at all?
It did. It did.
Okay.
And I have one other question. Can you scroll down? How did you do or just show the animation behind where you had like the different lifespan things and things kept popping up?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So this one here is you're talking about?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So this one, the way that this one works is these are actually icons that I put within a circle. Actually another feature that you can do here. So these are just, I can actually take the icon out of the circle if I wanted to here. This is just a little baby icon and just a yellow circle. That's all that is together. One thing that you can do in your graphics formatting is you can group images together so that way they work as one unit. So for example, this little baby here and this circle is actually one grouped image. So that way it'll move as a group together. And you can get that either in their shape format or your graphics format. There's this pick option that says group. And you have group, regroup, and ungroup. Now they're grouped together, so I can't group something that's already been grouped together. But if I ungroup them, you can see it actually creates it into two separate items there. So all I did here in order to put that together was I selected both of them at the same time. I made sure it was aligned perfectly in the center by hitting that align center and align middle. You can see him shift down a little bit, so that way he's in the middle. And then you just hit that group and group them together. So now it is one entity. And that way, when I do my morphing and my animation, it'll take the entire circle and move it together as a circle rather than trying to move them both separately. So that's where I started with that. So that's each of these is a grouped item together. And I can actually move this little baby over to the side here. So you can see, so this slide goes into this where they're just all now in a separate spot. So if I hit the transition morph preview, you can see it just took every single one of those items and pulled them down into respective spots. And then the next one here, I just took that little baby and pulled him up. And then I just added this text box of information. When you add a text box for morphing and there's no text box in the previous one, it just fades it in, which is kind of nice for some things. So you can actually see, if I preview it, it pulled it up and it starts talking about infancy. So, and then I just put the baby one back down here, pulled the child one up to the side. So then when it pulls it, it'll put it over there. The one important thing, so these are all grouped together as one image. And I'll show you why I had to do that to make it work. So if I ungrouped these, so now these are two separate images. Ungroup those. And those are now two separate images. And I'll ungroup these ones as well. So now this baby and this little child, these are, and the circles, they're all separate images. This is where I say the trial and error of morphing will happen when it comes to working with it. Because if I now go to transition, morph, you can see that's where the trial and error comes into place. It actually left this circle up here because it says, well, you wanted this circle here and you wanted the circle here. Why would I move this around if the circle's already there? I'm just going to slide this circle to the side and then pull the child up there and pull the baby down there. So for that reason, because it was starting to pull things separately, I had to group all these circles together to show that no, this is now one image, the circle with the child, and the baby with the circle is a separate image. So I want you to hold them together as grouped images. So that's where that's kind of an example of how I did that animation there and where some of that trial and error can go in. Any other things you guys want me to show you on this? All right. Well, if you have any questions on anything, or if you guys have your own slides or PowerPoints that you start trying things out or not sure how to do something, feel free to email me, or you can even email the Ori site and I'll see it there. And I can always help you with different stuff. And I'll just finalize here. actually we'll show you. You can see here, we have a couple little icons coming in. Whoopsies. A couple little icons coming in for our next slide. So if we pull up our presentation, here are our next resources. Woohoo. So some additional resources. I'll make sure that these resources are all in the email when I send out the recording for this. Microsoft actually has a lot of great just basic PowerPoint templates that have a lot of cool designs and backgrounds in there. Highly recommend you check them out. They have different designs based on different categories. If you want to have it look a certain way or have different themes, they have a lot of different stuff there. I know I said that you can easily Google icons or use the Microsoft icons for your presentations, but if there's a specific icon you can't find, VecDeezy is a site that I use a lot when it comes to looking for different icons. I always just recommend that when you download, first of all, make sure that the icon is a free icon you can utilize, and you can sort them by ones that are free and ones that require a subscription. But they have a lot of different free icons you can use. When you do download icons, make sure you download them as a PNG because then they will more likely be transparent. This YouTube channel here, this Fast PowerPoint Official, they have a lot of great little design things that you can do in PowerPoint, and they have a lot of little short clips of how to do different moving animations, how to make things, how to add cool pictures in there. It's a really fun YouTube page that has a lot of little short things, so highly recommend you check them out. And then finally, fonts. You can always download new fonts for your PowerPoints. 1001 Fonts is one of the common sites that I use for downloading fonts. I will give a heads up when it comes to downloading fonts. If you do download a custom font for your PowerPoint, that font will only be on your computer. So if you take your PowerPoint and send it to somebody else, they will not have that font downloaded on their computer. So PowerPoint will just put in a different basic font in its place, and it might ruin the formatting of your slides and presentations. So I always give that heads up that if you are using custom fonts, you will need to send your PowerPoints as PDFs to people in order to maintain that font that you put in there. So for example, these fonts that I used here, these are ones that I downloaded myself. So when I send out the information, I'm going to send it as a PDF so that way the fonts stay the same. Otherwise, if I sent you the actual PowerPoint of this, I mean, I'll send the PowerPoint as well so you can see where all those images go. But be forewarned, the fonts are going to get messed up because you do not have the fonts that I downloaded in there. So just keep that in mind if you do use custom fonts in your presentations. Otherwise, that's all I have. If you have any last minute questions, let me know and I can answer them. We also have our survey here that I'm going to put into the chat. Oh, why can't I put this in the chat? Okay, I am not able to get it into chat for some reason because it says I don't have admin restriction, even though I made this thing. Janelle, I just saw your message. Did you say that there are GIFs in the PowerPoint or in PowerPoint, or did you get them from Google? So Google, PowerPoint does not have GIFs currently that you can utilize. I got all of my GIFs from Google. So I would Google search GIF icon and whatever I was looking for, and that's how I'd get those GIFs added into my presentation. Unfortunately, PowerPoint does not have GIFs that you can use at this time. I wish they did. That'd be great. Maybe that's something they'll add in the future. Since I can't paste the survey into the chat, I will just email you the link to the survey. And I really appreciate you guys could complete it. Otherwise, I will stop the recording here and stop screen sharing.